Hello and welcome back to the Ascent cycling podcast, and it is a very exciting time of year because it is the eve of the first World Tour race of the season. We're heading to the UAE Tour and it is a pretty supercharged start list this year. The likes of Chris Froome, Tadej Pogacar going back, Adam Yates, last year's winner as well, will be debuting for the Ineos Grenadiers. But I think we'll take a good detailed look at the start list first before maybe taking a look at the stages, and then at the end of the pod we'll give our predictions as to what we see happening in the UAE. So Guillaume, why don't you run us through the start list?
I am indeed absolutely chuffed ahead of the UAE Tour, and as you've said, Joe, a massive start list to kick off the World Tour season, often obviously of the Santos Tour Down Under, and Tadej Pogacar, the Tour de France winner, will make his season debut here in the United Arab Emirates with UAE, a team that should have Marc Hirschi. However, he got replaced very late on by Jan Polans. By the way, as the time we are recording, all the teams have been confirmed except for EF, who just, I think, lost Rigoberto Urán. So their lineup could potentially still change from this point onwards to the start of the race. But apart from that, everything will be good. So as I said, Tadej Pogacar will lead the Emirati squad here on their national tour, but he will have quite a lot of opposition when it comes for the GC, with Adam Yates, last year's winner on Jebel Hafit, a massive win, by the way, last season from the Brit, who would then go on to win the UAE Tour. He will also be joined on the start list by a massive team from Bahrain Victorious, where Pauls, Jack Haig and Damon Caruso all aiming for that GC position. Emmanuel Buchmann will make his season debut for Bora Hansgrohe. And the wonder kid from Deceuninck Quickstep, or at least one of their wonder kids, in Joao Almeida, will also kick their seasons here in the UAE Tour. Those are the main GC guys, but how could we not mention, obviously, the season debut for Christopher Froome and his brand new team, Israel Startup Nation. He'll have an all-round team around him. I don't expect him to win the race, although it would be absolutely incredible. And also we'll have two times winner on the Jebel Hafit, Alejandro Valverde leading Movistar, and Vincenzo Nibali leading Trek Segafredo.
It's a really stacked start list in the GC, as you've explained. Did you mention Sepp Kuss as well for Jumbo-Visma, who I think will be leading the Dutch outfits, which I'm very excited to see him do a bit more this season. We also have Ivan Sosa for Ineos, who won last week, but I think the time trial will hurt him, and Alexei Lutsenko as well for Astana Premier Tech. He wasn't in the best form a few weeks ago in France, but he does tend to do well at the early season races, so we'll see if he improves this week. So just a really fun start list regarding the GC, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Chris Froome gets on, because I'm sure he'll have improved from last season. I expect to see him, if I had to guess, somewhere between his top form and his form he showed last year. Hopefully he's improved. I doubt he'll challenge for the overall win here, but hopefully he can compete maybe for a top 10. I think that would be a great result for Chris Froome. But for me, it's definitely going to be Tadej Pogacar being the big favourite for the home team to win overall.
I don't know. Adam Yates has proven times and times again that he is a very able rider on one-week races. They're both making their season debuts, so we'll see how that affects them. Also, Tadej now going for sure for the Tour de France as the title holder might somewhat change his preparation ahead of this season. I also think that the Ineos team is much more stacked when it comes to UAE. For the start list, Yates will be helped by Ivan Sosa, as you mentioned, in a great form as he won the Tour de la Provence. Dan Martinez, who will make his debut as well for Ineos, I believe, and Andre Amador. However, mountain-wise, for UAE, we'll have Rafa Maika, then Formolo and Polans. So the teams are good for sure. I would put Ineos just ahead, and then I think he'll just be up to the leaders. You've mentioned Sepp Kuss. I think that's his first leadership position for Jumbo. for quite a while now. I actually can't remember the last time Sepp Kuss was leading a team on a 1 week race. And also EF, as I said, they don't have Uran, but I didn't mention Sergio Higuita in the introduction, but the Colombian could well and truly play his card, and I think a top 10 is well and truly on the cards for the young Colombian.
It certainly could be. Higuita without Uran. I think Rigoberto Uran has dropped out because his wife has given birth. I think that's the reason so he's flown to the US, I think. I may be wrong there, but I think that's why he won't be in the UAE. Also a rider that is coming to the race is Pippo Ganna. Now, I don't expect him to challenge in the GC, but he could certainly add some more firepower to that Ineos squad. So, comparing the squads of Yates and Pogacar, who are probably the two big favourites going in, I would probably evaluate the Ineos team as being slightly stronger than the UAE squad, but it's going to be a fun one. Those two teams are going to be pretty keen to win this race with the UAE, of course, competing on home soil. Their sponsor is definitely going to be very desperate to win the overall after being pipped by Yates last season.
Now, UAE and Ineos, as we often see, are going to be focused on the GC. However, UAE does come here with Fernando Gaviria coming off a tough 2020 season. The Colombian will try and put his name once again back on the map with the help of Maxi Richese, one of the best lead-out men, if not the best one, because the debate is up there with a certain Mikel Morcau, who will be there for the Conan Quick-Step, leading Sam Bennett, the green jersey of the 2020 Tour de France, making his season debut as well here in the United Arab Emirates. The sprinting field is absolutely huge as well. We've mentioned that the GC will be a very tough fight, but for the sprints, we'll have the likes of, as I said, Gaviria, Sam Bennett, but we'll also have Elia Viviani making his debut for Cofidis this season and recovering from his 2020 illness. Pascal Ackermann will be leading Bora Hansgrohe. Caleb Ewan will be here for Lotto Soudal. The European champion, already stage winner this year, Giacomo Nizzolo, is here for Kubeka Assos. You've got the likes of Matteo Moschetti with Trek Segafredo, who we've mentioned very recently in our Trek podcast, which you can listen to again, or just listen to it if you hadn't done so. The Team DSM comes here with Kees Bol and Alberto Dainese. So Kees Bol, who did very well on the Tour de France last year, on some terrain that could very much suit him, as there is genuinely no elevation whatsoever. So yeah, the sprinting field, there'll be, I believe, 3 stages for the sprinters, maybe 4 actually, 4 stages for the sprinters, sorry. And there is about 10 sprinters that want to get one. And of course, I forgot to mention one team, which is Alpecin Phoenix, who not only come here with Mathieu van der Poel, but they also come here with Jasper Philipsen. And yes, it's gonna be very, very scary. And thank God the roads are very wide in the UAE.
That's for sure, because there's going to be so many teams aiming for those 4 sprint stages. As you've explained, really, just full of world-class sprinters. Also 2 riders that you haven't mentioned. I think Stefan Bisker will get the chance to sprint for EF Nippo. Now, of course, he hasn't really shown himself to be the level of the elite sprinters you've just mentioned, but I'm keen to see how Bisker gets on in the sprints, and also David Decker, who should be sprinting for Jumbo-Visma in his team debut as well, I believe. So 2 young riders who could maybe throw a surprise up at the UAE Tour this year. Also, Caden Groves is here for Team Bike Exchange. He's in his 2nd season now. And also Phil Bauhaus, who has won already at the Tour de la Provence. So just so many strong sprinters, and it's going to be chaotic, I think would be the words, those mass sprints in the UAE. So 7 stages in the UAE, and we have 4 allocated for the sprinters. They're pretty pancake flat, I think is the words. No hills at all throughout those stages, but we do have an individual time trial. It is 13 kilometers around Al Huduriyat Island, so that could definitely play a big role in the GC. That is stage 2, and then really the GC will be defined by 2 Queen stages. Stage 3, we have the finish to Jebel Hafit. We had 2 climbs there in last year's race due to the route being affected, I believe, by the coronavirus pandemic. But this year we are going back to stage 5. Jebel Yates, 21-kilometer climb, massive climb. It's not too steep, but it is just so long. Brutal climb there. So those are the 2 stages, stage 3 and stage 5, which really will be the mountaintop finishes and will be the deciders in the GC. And also, I have noticed there is no Hatter Dam this season, which is the wall of Hatter Dam. Massive percentages there. We've seen Caleb Ewan win there a few times. That is not being ridden at this year's race, which is, for me, the only notable exclusion.
Yeah, it is, and that's often the case with UAE Tour, because there's not many chances for interesting finishes. Hatter Dam always throws a little kick in the race, but I'm very happy to see Jebel Yates returning to the UAE Tour. I think last year it wasn't there because we had to, the riders, not us, but the riders had to do Jebel Hafid twice. So yeah, quite happy to see it back. It's a much tougher climb than Jebel Hafid, much longer, but it could definitely throw some shapes in the GC hopes.
So like we said, 2 ascents of Jebel Hafid in last year's race, which does give us a little preview as to what we can expect this season. So stage 3 to Jebel Hafid last year, Adam Yates won by over 1 minute ahead of Tadej Pogacar, Lutsenko, David Gaudu, Rafał Majka. It was an incredible ride, really, by the Brit to win by that margin on Jebel Hafid. It's not the longest climb at 9.5 kilometers, but an average of 7.4% does make it a very difficult one. And like I said, for Yates to win by that margin just won him the GC essentially, because stage 5, Pogacar tried to attack Yates and he did in fact take the stage win in a sprint, but Yates just sat on those guys' wheel, the likes of Pogacar and Lutsenko, and he cruised across the line in 3rd place behind Pogacar and Lutsenko in the same group where he did win the GC. So it really is a selective climb which has the potential to really shake up the GC, and if you're not feeling it on that Jebel Hafid climb, you're out the GC essentially.
You are, and it was a very dominant performance from Yates. He's actually, I believe, the first rider on the UAE Tour that managed to finish solo on Jebel Hafid, like by more than 4 or 5 seconds. It usually often is like either 2 or 3 riders or a bunch group of 10. So it really was a performance that has to be noticed. And then yeah, he just literally just followed Pogacar and Lutsenko on the second ascension of Jebel Hafid. Now Lutsenko is here, Pogacar is here, Yates is here. Lutsenko always is an early season rider, as we've mentioned early on, but he did struggle quite a lot on Provence. There is one factor that has to be mentioned, I think. It has to go with the weather. Now, it's not the biggest factor, but last week, the riders such as Ivan Souza, such as Alexei Lutsenko were in France on the Ventoux, where it was, I believe, around -5, -6. It should be about 26 degrees here in Alain for the start of the UAE Tour. So I believe some riders could potentially perform better. Lutsenko always does well, especially in the Middle East. He's won the Tour of Oman, I believe, twice. He's won many stages there. He performs well on the UAE Tour, so I'm quite curious to see how he'll bounce back from the Tour de la Provence. So I would definitely keep my eye on him. But with Jebel Yates, I think it might be just a tad too hard for the Kazakh. I would back Adam Yates, as I said, but everyone right now has a shot at winning because it's early season. We have no indicators whatsoever on the leader's fitness.
That's for me why these early season races are so great, because you come in without any form book and you have no idea really what's going to happen. But Jebel Yates for me will be tricky. I'm not sure it will be as tricky as Jebel Hafid, because let's look at the length. 21.5 kilometers. It's a massively long climb, but an average of 5.4%. And for me, a rider like Lutsenko could perhaps enjoy that climb a little more. I'm not sure. I feel Lutsenko may enjoy Jebel Yates slightly more than Jebel Hafit just because it's not as steep, essentially, where perhaps the more pure climbers will excel a little more. That's my thinking right now. Anyway, what do you think, Guillaume?
I mean, I can see it. I think the climb I would be able to use as a benchmark here would be the Green Mountain in Oman, where Lutsenko performed a lot, and I think it's similar to Jebel Hafit more than Jebel Jais. I think 21 kilometer, even if it's 5.5% gradient, it still like uses quite a lot in the legs. And when you have teams such as Ineos, such as UAE, such as Bahrain putting the rhythm, I think it could be too much of a strain for Lutsenko. And surely we'll see some riders trying to do something. The lack of Sepp Kuss, for once, he will be leading. He doesn't have a lot of teammates with him. I'm pretty certain we will see him on the attack. Why not seeing Valverde trying to go for something? He is a 2-time winner on Jebel Hafit. He could try to maybe do something in Jebel Jais because he may not have the explosivity he used to have, or the explosiveness he used to have back in the days. Vincenzo Nibali, I think, also fits in that whole group. So I think the toughest climb by far is Jebel Hafit, but Jebel Jais could prove to be a tough one by its length more than by its steepness.
Yeah, I'm sure we will see plenty of attacks on Jebel Jais, as it will be the final chance to make up ground in the GC. But I'm going to go back to the 2019 UAE Tour, which was the last time Jebel Jais was ridden. And on Jebel Hafit, we had 5 riders within 30 seconds of the winner. If we go to Jebel Jais, we had 21 riders within 30 seconds. So because I feel it's a fairly steady gradient, there's no really steep pitches, it does seem like it's slightly harder to create some gaps on Jebel Jais. So for me, I think Jebel Hafit for me is the queen stage of this race. I think if the leader has over a 10-second gap on after Jebel Hafit, I think they'll be difficult to overhaul on Jebel Jais, really. But of course, we will see. Early season, anything could happen here.
We've come to the final part of this preview, and we are obviously going to do some predictions ahead of the UAE Tour. The way we're going to do it is somewhat simple. We will say each the sprinter who we'll think will perform the best. We won't go stage by stage, at least not for the sprint one. We will give the time trial winner, the winner on Jebel Jais, on Jebel Hafit, and then our top 3 for the general classification ahead of this UAE Tour. Joe, who is your best sprinter ahead of this race?
I'm going for the European champion Giacomo Nizzolo. He's already won the Classica de Almeria this season, and he's just very consistent to me, and he had a great season last year, and I'm really hoping he can kick on this season in that European champions jersey.
Interesting. I, on the other hand, will once again go for a European. I'm going to go for the green jersey of the Tour de France, Sam Bennett. He always does well here in the UAE. He won in Dubai 2 years ago, I believe, to wrap up the season. I think he also won last year. So, yeah, the Irishman is my pick for the best sprinter.
So, like Guillaume said, we'll pick out the TT winner, the Hafit winner, and the Jebel Jais winner. So, Pippo Ganna is here in the UAE, and he's a man who has won his last 7 time trials. He's going for 8 in a row here. So I think if one of us don't pick Ganna, do we know what we're talking about?
I mean, I think the question overall is worthy to be asked. Do we know what we're talking about, even if we're picking Ganna? But I think betting against Ganna on a 13-kilometer flat time trial, it's just asking to lose money.
I think we need to be discussing how much he's going to win by rather than if he's going to win.
That's a fair assumption. I do rate it. I think he'll win by 24 seconds ahead of Alex Dowsett, who is my pick for runner-up.
That's interesting. I'll go 18 seconds, an 18-second win for Ganna, and I'll actually put Mikkel Bjerg of UAE, the home team, in second place, a young time trialist who I think could have a good season as well.
No, moving on to what is considered the queen stage of this UAE Tour, the climb towards Jebel Hafit. It's a tough one to predict because of the huge start list we have, but I'm gonna go once again for a rider from Ineos. I backed him at the start. I'll go for Adam Yates winning the back-to-back in Jebel Lafitte.
That's an interesting one. He'll definitely be, I think, alongside Pogacar, the favourite for that stage, but I'm going to go for a different rider. I'm going to go for Sepp Kuss to win on Jebel Lafitte. We haven't seen him yet this season, but I'm just so excited to see Kuss lead some races for Jumbo-Visma this year, and the climb suits him really well, so I'll go Sepp Kuss. And then the final stage we'll predict Jebel Yates. I will go for the home man, Tadej Pogacar, riding for the home team, and I think he'll win on Jebel Yates. I think it suits perhaps the climbers with a good kick, a good sprint in the final. I think there'll be a group of riders coming to the finish together, and I think Pogacar will be the quickest. So
there's a part of me that wants to go for a realistic winner, and there's one name that I've had my eye on since the start of this preview. For some odd reason, I really think Mathieu van der Poel could have the legs to go at Jebel Yates. And I don't know why. I just feel like it would suit him. However, because I'm not that much of a madman, I'll back Pogacar as well, I think.
I love that shout by you. Mathieu van der Poel, I mean, he's on the start list, and I find it a bit interesting that he's here because Philipsen is surely going to sprint for Alpecin Phoenix. And I think, I mean, on paper, I thought Jebel Lafitte and Jebel Yates would be too difficult for him. But if he wins on Jebel Yates, we've never seen him climb that well before. That'll be something special.
I mean, we haven't really seen him climb at all. That's the thing. It's uncharted territories here, especially with that much of a start list. So yeah, I'm gonna go Pogacar. I want to be a bit more basic, but I'm definitely keeping an eye out for VGP.
I'm a bit excited by that shout from you. I think that's a great shout, to be fair, because I think Jebel Yates, I think it could suit even riders like Ganna. I mean, without Jebel Lafitte, I'd have Ganna probably as a rider I think who could win this race, but I think Lafitte will be too difficult for the Italian. So it's a fair shout. I really think it is a fair shout to say Van der Poel can do well, but yeah, for sure, Pogacar will be one of the favourites for the stage.
Yeah, and I think UAE will at least try to have a stage win, potentially a GC, I don't know. And, well, in order to know that, Joe, do you have your podium ready for the UAE Tour?
Oh, it's difficult. It's really difficult. Because I think there's 3 or 4 riders who I think can really win this race. I think Yates, Pogacar, Sepp Kuss, and Joao Almeida, who has shown he can time trial really well. Is he going to be in form? We don't know. I'm going to go with Sepp Kuss. I'll go Sepp Kuss to win the overall here in the UAE. I think Yates and Pogacar are probably the safer pick, but I'll go for Sepp Kuss. He will lose time in the time trial, that's for sure. But I think he can do what Yates did and ride solo to the line on Jebel Lafitte and then hold it on Jebel Yates. So I'll go for Sepp Kuss to win overall. I'll have Adam Yates in second and Pogacar to finish in third place. That's my podium. I mean, it's a bit risky, but we'll see.
That's a very interesting podium because there is one name you haven't mentioned and I have him on my podium. And it's not Mathieu van der Poel for those asking. However, it is another Dutchman. In third place of my UAE Tour, I will have third place of the 2015 UAE Tour, Wout Poels. He looked very good in Provence. Jebel Lafitte is a climb that really suits him. He's not that bad on the time trial element, and his team is strong. He's got Caruso, Jack Haig, and Gino Meda to help in the mountain. So I will back Wout for a podium position. In second place of the UAE Tour, I will have Alexei Lutsenko. And in first place, for the back-to-back, we'll have Adam Yates. Tadej Pogacar will not be on the podium of the UAE Tour.
Oh, that is a big shout. That is a really big shout. I mean, both of us don't have him winning, which I find funny because I'm sure he'll be the favourite simply because I think he'll have a bigger motivation than some others to win this race, and the team will. But yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting that neither of us have gone for Pogacar, and you not even on the podium.
Nah, I have him fourth, just ahead of Sepp Kuss, which I think will lose sadly too much. I think the loss is too big on the time trial compared to what you can get back on the 2 mountain stages.
Yeah, it could be the case. Could well be the case. He'll need a performance like Yates last year on Jebel Hafid to win it, but I think he's got it in him somewhere. We'll see if he does, though. We'll see.
Obviously, if Pogacar wins, you can all come back to this podcast and clip the fact that we both said he's not winning. Because, yeah, we know what we're talking about. Again, we're qualified.
And like that, if Kuss or Yates win, you can equally come back and thank us for the correct predictions.
But with those predictions now done, it is time to wrap up this preview for the UAE Tour, our first preview of a World Tour race this year, and it feels good. It feels good. I mean, cycling is back. Let us know what you thought of our preview, of our prediction in the comment section if you're listening on YouTube, because we'd be very happy to hear your guys' feedback. And overall, thank you very much for listening to this podcast, both on YouTube or your streaming platforms. Joe, do you have a final word for this UAE Tour?
It's Kuss time.
It's Kuss time. Well, for now, it's goodbye. See you guys.
Cheers, guys.